Hello, my name is Denise and I'm a student of the September 2019 cohort of Manchester Code's Software Engineering Fast Track course. Over the next few minutes I'll be showcasing an app I made for my graduation project, so thank you for joining and I hope you like it. Okay, let's get started. To get my project off the ground, I created a plan and mapped the tasks I'd need to complete within the deadline I had and then categorised them. You can read about my motivations for this project here at the bottom of my app. But I started with planning and then moved on to selecting the tools I'd need for the task. I decided to make a single page app in React.js. We were learning specifically about it on our course and I'm really excited by React and its potential, and I wanted to continue my learning on it. So I decided to code the app in VS Code and use an API which is really well structured and has a lot of options, as you can see here. In order to get the jokes I needed for the app, I called on this API. So I decided also I would deploy to my GitHub pages rather than a live domain, because this is such a simple one-page app. Then I decided the next stage was to decide on its design and UX and layout and so on. I considered things such as using the Manchester Code's brand identity, the fonts and the colour palette, as my app is designed for software development students. I also wanted to make sure that I took accessibility into account, specifically colour blindness. This is because 4.5% of the UK's population is thought to be affected by colour blindness of some kind. So I chose this colour scheme from the Manchester Code's palette of orange and grey. Now, orange is one of the colours that causes fewest problems for colourblind users. I also made my text nice and large with header tags. I chose a sans serif font and I made sure all the images have alt tags. Then I got down to the actual coding. As you can see, due to this being in React.js, I coded in HTML adapted to JSX and I styled with CSS using the Sass extension language. So to take you through my code, here you can see I've created a render method which tells the browser to return my basic components. So here I have things such as headers and a button which fires the function, a couple of images, a footer, some contact details and social links, and a brief explanation of my reasons for choosing this particular project. And as we're coding in JSX, it's all wrapped in divs so as to be functional. So to look under the hood of my code, at the top here we have all of the appropriate imports for a React app. Then I needed to manage the process of the user clicking the button by using state. So state being, simply put, a piece of data stored on this component and able to be passed on to other components. So this here is the parent component which manages the state. And on line 5 here we have my constructors, which are past props here. Super calling the parent constructor, and this .state attribute initializing the state on the class component. So here I've got a simple piece of writing in my state that shows when the user logs onto the page, and this is what it's reset to when the page is reloaded. So then under here we have a function that makes the call to the API. So I used Axios's get request and I restricted the category of jokes to nerdy, as these are all specific to programmers, as you can see. Here I've used the relatively new .then. All this does is to make a promise that once the information is returned from the API, it will initiate this response function, which changes the state to deliver back the data from the joke field of the API. As I'm relying on data from a third party, I actually created a clause here with .catch, which lets me and the user know if there's been an error with the request, which will need to be fixed. So on this line here at the bottom of the constructor, this is manually binding the instance value of .this to my method. This is so I can use a callback with .this in it after the render method is run. So that's my code explained. Here is my app in action. So here's the default text that I was just explaining when the page is first loaded, and which will appear when we reload the page. And then we have the button itself. when you press the button, it changes with the state to return various quotes from the API from the specific category I set up in the URL. So as you can see here, it'll come back with some hilarious Chuck Norris random quotes which are associated with programming specifically, and maths and logic. So there you have it, a simple app with the purpose of encouraging software students to keep taking breaks while using the Pomodoro technique, and also to remember that coding projects and apps can be for fun as well as functional. Thanks for watching, enjoy the rest of the graduation.